Here we are with Module 3, and this will allow us to implement a continuous delivery environment here using pipelines. So we are in the environment, as we mentioned before. And if you take a look here, you'll see that it's cool store dev. To have a decent pipeline to production, we should have a production environment as well. So let's do that. The first thing we'll do is we'll create a project. We'll call it user3 cool store prod. I'll copy and paste that rather than trying to um, remember that, because it is important that we have that name add up, because it's going to be an entry in our Jenkins scripts. So then we will add the monolith with a pipeline method. And we'll do that within production. So let's do that. Get over here, and if I use the drop down here, I can create a project. It doesn't really matter so much what we call it. And I think we want to put that in dev, don't we? No, we'll create our production. Then we'll, from the catalog, tell it we want cool store monolith with pipelines. We'll instantiate that template. User3 will be my ID. And everything else can be left as default. I'm just going to double check this. Yeah, we verified that. And we'll tell it to go ahead and instantiate. Okay, so it's going to work now. And the backend database is happening. If I click on the deployment config, I can actually see that it's pretty fast for Postgres to invoke here, and the dark blue means it's available. And if I view the logs, I can see, yep, Postgres started, and it's listening on all IP addresses, and it's typical port 5432. Now here we have a cool store app, and it's not yet deploying, and it's not set up to deploy, but we've created some basic fundamental resources around it so it can be deployed. And this labeling will change the grouping and the visual elements within the topology view. So now if I take a look at the topology view, yep, all of a sudden they got the Postgres elephant and the underlying platform technology for the application. In this case, it's represented as JBoss. And then we're going to deploy a Jenkins server into this space as well. An ephemeral version, we don't need permanent storage. And we'll put it in the production place. We'll up the memory limit because Jenkins is a big boy, and we'll turn off some of the extraneous features in terms of intensive administration monitors that we don't really need today. So I'll add over here on the left, there's a plus add, and go from catalog. Make sure none of these over here are check marked. That's often a gotcha. You won't see what you want to see. And I will select this, instantiate. And I said I wanted to double the memory to 2. I'll make this true. And everything else looks fine. And we'll see this deploy. It's creating the container. Now it's running. It's not ready yet because it's light blue. And we can see why. It's coming up. But that'll continue while we progress on the workshop. I can label this to get what I want to see in terms of the Jenkins image. So all I need to do is run this label command in the terminal. And just like that. And now it's up and running. That's good. And now we're going to use a pipeline to promote from dev to production through the continuous delivery process. And we can take a look at the pipeline. There's one running, there's one already established. So if I go to my topology and I'll go down here, you'd think to look at the pipelines, you'd go to pipelines, but you'd be wrong. You go to builds and click on monolith pipeline. And then there is a file here. It's entitled document file, but of course it's a JSON object here. It defines the pipeline. And we'll see it's going to do a build, do a sleep, run tests in dev, then deploy to production, and then it's going to do run tests in production, which consists of a sleep of 30 seconds, and then it's off and going. So it's a very simplified, simulated sort of pipeline environment. And if we wanted to see that in beautiful ASCII or its modern variant, we can just go ahead and ask to describe the pipeline, and we'll see the same JSON right here at the bottom of the terminal. I don't have a very big window there because of my inadequate mousing skills, but you get the idea. There we go. Now we will actually start the build, and this will activate our deployment. So if I go to my builds, I'm just going to go back here so I know where I'm at. Click on this, action, start build. Yeah, and there's a pipeline here. Now there's a deprecation warning. This is a in OpenShift representation of this pipeline, and this is eventually going away. We expect people to use just external Jenkins pipelines or use a Jenkins pod like we're doing here today, but managing it within Jenkins. Pipelines as represented within OpenShift will move to the Tecton serverless, stateless, just-in-time ephemeral builds from the Cloud Native Foundation. Now we're running the tests, deploying a prod. Let's see what it looks like. Go back to topology. Okay, you can see this is on the way up. There's no build icon. You know, on the bottom left here, we'll see builds from time to time. The build's all happening within the Jenkins. So there's just going to be a deployment. If I click on the deployment config here, and this is running. The darker ring means it's actually available. Click on this now. Yeah, here's the cool store. And note, there is a black background to the banner at the top. That'll be significant here as we move along, because we're going to change that in order to represent an evolution in the software that we'll rebuild. So now it'd be nice to have an approval step to greater simulate what is actually happening in the real world. So here's a modification to the script to say approved to go live, and we have 30 minutes to make the decision. In real life, of course, you probably have some kind of a Slack or a Google Chat or maybe an email or some workflow in ServiceNow. But here we're just going to do a little message and allow us to hit yay or nay. So I'm going to copy that. And if I take a look at this, I want to edit it right in here. So I'm going to go back to builds, pipelines, and then I'm going to go into YAML representation here. There's a YAML editor with highlighting. And I'm going to want, between running the test and dev and deploying to prod, that's where my step belongs. I find it easiest just to go back to the left, hit Control V, because these copy and paste commands have the proper number of spaces. Now, when I save, if it's a valid format, I didn't botch it up, it will save, otherwise it'll refuse to save. And now we've changed our pipeline. So we need to change things around so we can see any effects here. We'll make a simple change to the app. And what we'll do is we'll change the cascaded style sheet in the Cool Store app to make a blue banner here. We'll do that in the dev environment. We'll deploy it first, the dev environment. But so here we go. We go to inventory, source, main, and we want to be in the web app. Let me find it in the right spot. Main web app. Source. Yeah, I need to be doing this in the monolith. That makes perfect sense. Source, web app, and app. Here's a Cool Store CSS. Okay, that change is made. And we'll change the endpoint in the monolith application to use that app. So that'll be done here. I'll control that out, L that, so you can see what's going on. Okay, so that has changed our endpoint. Uses a stream editor to replace the URL. And now we can rebuild the application using the Maven build process. And we'll rebuild the monolith here. This whole monolith versus inventory versus a catalog has to do with constraining the monolith and moving more of the logic to microservices. Okay, so that should, and then we're going to redeploy it. And this will redeploy in dev. Cool Store dev right here, which makes a lot of sense. And this command, here, let's change this back to topology and tell it we want to watch it in dev. Okay, the build's finishing. See this little circle here? There's a build running here. And if I click on that, I can actually watch the build happening. So the build is pushing the container image back up to this caching registry built right into OpenShift. Push successful. Now I'd expect a deployment to be going on. Be more visible from the topology view. Okay, and you can see what's going on with the deployment. And we can view the logs here to see, probably see Java start up pretty soon. Yep, there it is. Doesn't say it's ready yet. There, the dark blue means it's ready. And remember, we changed the top banner to blue. Let's see. And there it is. So up here we see this is dev, cool store dev. Only changes the blue top banner. And if I refresh this, this is the link we already had up. That's going to be blue. I want to verify that the production instance is still black. So if I go to topology and go to production, yeah, that's still black. So dev here, production here. Let's run the pipeline and promote that blue version. So what we'll do is as simple at this point as going to the pipelines and details page in builds and start build. Builds, select the pipeline, action, start build. Okay, to monitor this, we see these stages here. The best bet is it's going to tell us shortly that there's an approval needed and click to open Jenkins to give the approval. Okay, input required. I click here. And I got to log into Jenkins. And we're proxying the authentication against OpenShift. So we just use OpenShift credentials. Okay, here we are. We're in the build. Okay, in the console output, there is a go live in production question mark, and I'm going to proceed. Otherwise, the demo just doesn't work. Okay, and now let's run this. Sorry about my shifting around here. We're going to go to the topology view, and we can see that there's a deployment going on now in production. Here's my production. I'm not going to click on anything because the deployment's not done. So it's scaling down one pod and bringing up another pod. That's what a deployment configuration does. I can't resist watching Java boot up. There is a Java version that we'll go into in one of these chapters that boots up in about a second, known as Quarkus. Okay, now I can open another link here, but I'm going to go to my production. I can refresh this, and the refresh shows a blue banner. So blue banner production, blue banner dev, successful promotion to the production environment from dev. Of course, your pipelines will be considerably more complicated than this. And this is the representation. We have two complete environments and the pipeline promotion. Thank you, and that's the end of chapter 3 here.